Illinois basketball looks to go 3-0. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Simple reminder, you can support the channel just by finding us on your favorite audio platforms, hitting that subscribe button, or on YouTube, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me at IlliniCast, or you can find me at the Sunny V, or your favorite social media. Do a quick search for Locked On Illini. Just know that's me that you're communicating with. So if you got some feedback for the show, if you'd like, there's a certain content creator that you want me to bring on, if there's a certain article that you really like that you want me to bring up, just let me know. Easiest way to contact me. Also, there's a Discord, new Locked On Illini Discord. Some of you have already joined. Tell your friends, let them know, and we'll get that community growing as well. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about Illinois versus Oakland. Quick preview. I'll get to it in a second. There's not much to talk about, but then there is much to talk about Ted later on. He had his bye week, and he's made his return to Locked On Illini. Okay, first and foremost, let's just go ahead and start talking about Illinois against Oakland. Now, Oakland historically has one of the best coaches in the country. They obviously did very well last year with a couple of key upsets that had the world talking. But if I'm going to be honest with you, I was deep diving into the roster this year. I was looking at their box scores this year, and this team really doesn't look all that good. It's still a level up from competition when it comes to our first two teams that we've played in Eastern Illinois and SIUE, but I don't necessarily think that Oakland's going to be a team that should at least challenge Illinois on Wednesday night. So for that reason, I'm not going to focus too much on the Oakland side. I figured today I'm going to kind of talk about what I want to see from Illinois, mainly because after this game, the next looming challenge is going to be against Alabama. Alabama, arguably the top team in the entire country. A team that, it looks like they can score 100 every single game, just like Illinois can. And so we definitely want to be fine-tuned, ready to go for that clash next Wednesday. So what am I looking for against Oakland? I think I'm going to start off by giving an answer that probably a lot of us have, and that's I just want to see Colin Boswell's impact on the box score match, what I think his impact on the court can be. There's already, some whispers on whether he should be replaced in the starting lineup. Obviously, I talked about it on Monday's episode, whether Will Riley should be inserted into the starting lineup. And a lot of you left comments mentioning Kylan Boswell, and if he was going to be the odd man out. Let me know in the comments right now if you think we're at the point right now where Kylan Boswell should be looking over his shoulder at maybe DGL replacing him. But for me, I ultimately think that if Illinois is to reach its potential as a basketball team this year, at some point it's going to need Kylan Boswell to play a significant role. And that's not a role where he needs to average 12 to 15 points a game. Not at all. I think he just needs to be that veteran presence who the other players look up to when it comes to the defensive end. Kylan has been one of our better defensive players this year. He hasn't even played bad. Again, it's just unfortunate for Kylan that his numbers haven't really been box-worthy numbers. I mean, even Brad Underwood had to answer some questions, and he mentioned Kylan Boswell in his press conference earlier on Tuesday. His name is popping up because his return was so heralded. Of course, it's a hometown kid, former 5/4-star kid returning home. He was the first big name to commit to the Illini. Obviously this was before Will Riley or Kasparis had signed on Illinois, but maybe his expectations was he was going to be one of the main players on this Illinois basketball team. Well, I mean, to no fault of his own, Brad Underwood has built a really solid roster up and down. So it doesn't look like we're going to be counting on Kylan to be one of the 2 or 3 best basketball players on the court, but that doesn't mean he's not one of the 3 or 4 most valuable. I really think that, especially going up against a team like Alabama the following week, you don't want the spotlight on Kylan more than it needs to be. I think if Kylan has one of those games where he has 13 to 15 points, plays the way he always does on the defensive end, it gives Illinois another level of confidence going up against what I mentioned earlier as arguably the best team in the country. The other guy who I want to see have a big game against Oakland, not that I think we're going to need it, is Will Riley. I think that if Illinois has any sort of chance to beat Alabama next week, we're going to need a big, huge Will Riley. And I'm talking about 25 plus points performance. And I just hope that he's able to use Oakland as kind of Oakland plays its own defense, right? So Illinois, the way we are built, again, I don't think we're going to have too much of a problem against their defense. So Will Riley's going to be able to get his looks. And this is a game where Kasparis could be looking forward to getting another double-digit assist game, maybe even matching the 13 that he had previously. Will Riley, I think we're going to need one of his heaters that he went on against Eastern Illinois to beat a team like Alabama a week from now. And so for me, I talked about him a little bit on Monday's episode, where I know the popular talk is wanting Will in the starting lineup, but there's other things that he just kind of still has to work on before he's going to be given those big minutes and that starting lineup duty. But a game against Oakland, a team who historically, again, is pretty good. I don't think they're going to be all that good this year. And quite honestly, it might ultimately be the worst team of the first 3 that we play, by the time the season is over. But again, their coaching staff is very solid. I'm going to be interested in seeing what kind of game plan that they have lined up. But regardless of what game plan that they conjure up, Will Riley, I'm hoping to see another 20-plus point game, get his confidence up, maybe get him another opportunity to win Big Ten Freshman of the Week. Because, again, we're going to need the best of Will Riley to compete against a team like Alabama. Visic, honestly, I'm at the point, and this might be silly, considering we're only 2 games in, but Visic, to me, I'm already trusting. I already look at him as a walking double-double type of guy. Morez Johnson, I know what he's going to bring, and I don't think Morez Johnson's the type of guy who's going to have off nights, mainly because what he's good at, which is just bringing energy and rebounding the basketball, you don't necessarily have off nights doing something like that. But Will Riley, obviously right now, it's just a volume shooter, a guy who, when he gets hot, he can get as hot as anybody in the country. And again, maybe it's wishful thinking. Of course, I've already predicted us to lose that Alabama game next week, but who knows? Maybe a big Will Riley performance, or maybe somebody else stepping up on Wednesday night is going to make me change my mind, and maybe Illinois can pull off the big upset. A friendly reminder, the game is Wednesday night, and so make sure you're locked onto this channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I go live immediately after that game. So we'll be talking about Oakland, Illinois. I'll talk about what I liked from the game, what I didn't quite like from the game. I'll talk about whether my predictions were right. We'll see what kind of game Will Riley has. But again, every single day, Illinois content. So make sure you are locked on Illini, literally on YouTube. Friendly reminder, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. We only have 3 weeks left in the college football season, and 3 weeks from now, Illinois is going to be playing Northwestern at Wrigley Field, and I myself will be back home and planning on attending that game. I don't have tickets yet, but when I do, I'll certainly be looking at the Game Time app. Game Time has all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. I'll have my official Illinois versus Michigan State preview up later on this week, but I took a look at the Big Ten schedule, and there's actually some pretty good games going on this weekend. And for that, I bring back my good friend, Ted, the Mr. Big Ten. Ted, thank you so much for coming by, Ted.
Oh, it's good to be here. It's good to be back a little bit after a little bit of a bye week later on during the season. We're looking to freshen up, get our legs ready to go, just like a team on the field. We're certain to look to come off of the bye week and hit the ground running and have a strong performance today.
Well, I mean, certainly Illinois is going to be looking to do just that. It's a game where nationally, I think maybe not a lot of people will consider Michigan State versus Illinois being a big deal. But between two of the fan bases, I think both fan bases come in nervous, and both fan bases come in really needing this game. Now, Illinois, obviously, we've already clinched our bowl game, but for the last couple of years, we've really struggled once the calendar hits November. And Michigan State, I just recorded the crossover episode with Matt Sheehan from Locked On Spartans. They've got 3 games left, and they got to win 2 of them. And Illinois is just one of those teams that they're looking at, hopefully trying to sneak one in, similar to what happened a couple of years back. But Ted, let me ask you, what are your thoughts on Illinois versus Michigan State?
This is an interesting game. I look at the schedule of games. We'll talk about 2 other games, but this is right up there. I think this game and then UCLA-Washington are kind of that third, maybe most intriguing game of the weekend. This is a Michigan State team that's right on the precipice of bowl eligibility. And when we talked about year 1 under Jonathan Smith, getting to a bowl game, I think would be a big step up for them, because not a lot of people talk about this. They see the 6-win plateau as just, finishing 500 or above, but it's big in developing your program because of those extra bowl practices, right? Where other teams, if you're not bowl eligible, obviously you can't have those bowl practices. And obviously now in the day and age of opt-outs, it gets your young players, right, starting experience in practice, and then, of course, in the game in those one type of reps. So this and other games down the stretch are very big for Michigan State. This is a team that's kind of had their highs and their lows. Certainly this season with Aiden Childs, you talk about the turnovers, certainly a little bit earlier on during the season. It seems like he's progressively improved, progressively gotten better as the season has gone along. And now you got an Illinois team that's kind of sitting there. They're coming off of a loss to Minnesota, and then they had the bye week, and everybody's kind of maybe forgotten about them a little bit, right? Because they were kind of, when I did my best of the rest, they were up there. Right. Sure. And then they lost to Minnesota. So here we are. But now people aren't thinking about them as much. And thoughts of 2022, I'm sure, are creeping in the fan base's head of the Illini right now, when Illinois was in prime position atop the Big Ten West to maybe go to the Big Ten championship game, and a Michigan State team that I think finished something like 4-8 that year ended up beating them. So now for Illinois, after that loss to Minnesota, this is a big bounce back. I think that was a pretty well-placed bye week after that loss to kind of regroup, to kind of refocus, and to be able to hit the ground running, certainly in this football game. I think that this is going to be a very close football game. I do not see this being a blowout in any form or fashion. And then when it comes down to a close game, it comes down to turnovers. I trust Illinois to maybe take better care of the football, maybe be a little bit more fundamentally sound than Michigan State. I talked about how Aiden Childs has gotten better at quarterback, but still you see those little inklings of a young quarterback and still turning the football over. So I think that this is going to be a fun game. I think the Illinois pass defense is going to be tested a little bit, right? The fabulous freshman Nick Marsh, certainly on the outside, has turned some heads. He's certainly impressed. So Illinois got to have their T's crossed and their I's dotted, certainly on the back end in that secondary as well. And then that Illinois run defense. I think Michigan State, they got the combination of Nate Carter and K'Ron Lynch-Adams that has been pretty good so far this season. We'll see if Michigan can get back to balance. I think Illinois' defense, how good is the Illini defense going to play? How many turnovers can they force in this game could certainly determine which way this one goes.
Yeah, I think takeaways is going to be huge for this game. I think Michigan State, and I hope I'm not jinxing anything by saying this, is kind of like the perfect opponent for the Illini right now, just because the biggest weakness Illinois has right now is that offensive line. And Michigan State just really doesn't have the guys on that defensive line that are really going to, cause havoc to Luke Altmaier. And I've talked about this before. I'm very high on Luke Altmaier as a quarterback, but there's no doubt he struggled the last couple of games. And I really think that the optimistic part of me says that he's going to use this as kind of a bounce back game, especially with the game at home. It's senior night. A lot of these players are going to be celebrated for wearing their Illini jersey, possibly for the last time.
Yep.
I'm hoping that Luke bounces back, has a good, solid game. Hopefully a comfortable victory for Illinois. I think the spread is 3.5 last time I checked, and that'll give them the confidence going into the final two games. Rutgers had a bounce back victory last week, but a team that's been kind of struggling as of late. Illinois should be favored in that game, and then of course the final game of the season at Wrigley Field, which, by the way, any of the viewers who are going to be in Chicagoland, I'll be attending that game, so definitely let me know. Ted, what are the other games you're looking at this weekend?
We'll get to Oregon and Wisconsin, but I want to talk. This is so intriguing. Nebraska and USC, man. Since the early 90s, we have not had ties in college football. Somebody's got to win. Okay, that's where I go with a 5-4 Nebraska that is reeling right now, and a 4-5 USC. And this one is just so darn fascinating. This one's got college football unpredictability written all over it. Both of these teams are coming off of a bye, all right? And both of these teams made major changes during the bye week. Let's start first with those folks from Southern California with the USC Trojans. Miller Moss, it became clear that the lack of protection on the offensive line, the hits that he's taken, he's starting to see ghosts a little bit out there. He's starting to maybe quicken his reads and maybe throwing the ball quicker than he needs to, and thus resulting into some turnovers. Yeah, it was time to certainly make a move. So now you go with Jade Maeva, right? It was announced actually early in the bye week, right before this week, that he was going to be the quarterback. So they have that extra week to get him ready to go. What are you getting in Jade Maeva? You're getting a pretty different quarterback than you got in Miller Moss, right? You're getting a bigger guy, young quarterback, okay? You're throwing a young quarterback into this situation, into a Nebraska defense that can be good. We've seen them ride the roller coaster certainly a little bit this season. But when you look at USC football, what's been the problem is Lincoln Riley hasn't invested enough in the run game. And now you got a quarterback that's kind of a dual threat type of option. You look back at his film at UNLV, some design QB run. So I'm very curious how much they implement that skill set. This is a little bit, you're giving Maeva a little bit of a runway, certainly for next season. I don't think Miller Moss is going to be on this roster next season. I think that's pretty apparent. So this is kind of a little bit of an audition for Jade Maeva. And if I'm Tony White, if I'm Nebraska, I don't know what I'm going to get, right? I don't know if I'm going to get more QB run. I don't know if I'm going to get RPO. I don't know what I just don't know what I'm going to get. And being a young quarterback as well. So we'll see how you game plan for that. Let's talk about the flip side. All right. When you talk about that, that's just one. Now the quarterback is the most important piece to the team, but now, so Nebraska during the bye week says, okay, we're bringing in Dana Holgerson as an offensive consultant. Okay. All right. That's cool to kind of help out a little bit. And then Matt Rule says, oh yeah, about that. Yeah, he's our offensive coordinator now. Yeah, he's calling plays now. And we're like, okay, that escalated quickly, as Ron Burgundy said. So Dana Holgerson, he's an air raid guy, has put up big numbers when he was at Oklahoma State, head coach at West Virginia, head coach at Houston. Now I don't think there's going to be a ton of change, right? In terms of the language, the terminology, the formations they line up in, stuff like that. I think you're going to see less screen passes. Marcus Satterfield, that's all he seemed to do is throw the lateral pass. Nebraska did not have the team speed to be able to, outside of really Ja'Cory Barney making a couple of plays, to really be able to take advantage of that. So I think this is more of, hey, let's operate within our playbook. Let's operate within what our players are used to. Let's just get a little bit more better play calling sequences. I think it was very apparent, especially these last 2 weeks or last a couple of weeks for Marcus Satterfield that, he was not getting it, right? He wasn't running the football enough. They were throwing it laterally. They weren't throwing the ball downfield. Dylan Raiola was not necessarily improving at the quarterback position. So and if I'm USC defensively, they're already kind of shorthanded with some injuries that they've had this season. And now you don't know what you're going to get from a play calling perspective. You can watch film, right, to kind of see formations and what happens. But in terms of, hey, what are they going to call in 3rd and 2? What are they going to call in 2nd and 7? It's going to be very different with Dana Holgorsen either up there in the booth or on the sideline calling plays for Nebraska. So if you're a gambler, don't do it, because don't put money on this game. I have no idea what's going to happen. I said at the beginning, this is college football unpredictability at its finest. USC, of course, going to be playing a little bit with a heavy heart, with the passing of John Robinson, certainly. And they're going with those throwbacks. They're going with those throwbacks that USC had a lot of success when Coach Robinson, that West Coast legend, was roaming the sidelines. So they are going to, you got to think they're going to be ready to play, and the Coliseum is going to be jumping, and there's going to be certainly a lot of juice into that stadium as well. I talked about Oregon and Wisconsin.
But I got a quick question about this
before
we go to the next one, actually.
Yep.
So I trust your opinion more than most when it comes to the Big Ten, but whose seat is hotter right now? Is it Matt Rule or is it Lincoln Riley? Because I've had this conversation outside the show, and honestly, I've gotten 50-50 feedback. I genuinely believe this is almost a must-win for both of these head coaches.
I look at the rest of their schedules. I'll put it this way. I look at the rest of them, and they're pretty different situations, obviously, but I think the loser does not make a bowl game. I honestly think that is a possibility. When you look at Nebraska, right, they're sitting there both have played 9 games, right, this season. Yeah, I think that's right. You look at what Nebraska has. If they lose this game, okay, I know Wisconsin isn't looking great right now, but Wisconsin has had a favorable record in the past against Nebraska. And then you look at Iowa, if Iowa can just smash and run the football right at them, nothing's guaranteed. Certainly the rest of the way is, I guess, what I'm trying to say for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And if they think about this, you talk about the hot seat. Matt Rule was 5-2 after the Illinois game, right? And I've said that on my channel, on my show, ever since that Illinois game. It just seems like they've taken a nosedive and things have just regressed right now. If they once again don't make a bowl game, if this loss continue, especially after making that offensive coordinator change, I don't think Matt Rule is going to get fired after 2 years. And when we talk about these guys, we got to talk about buyouts, of course, especially Lincoln Riley. I'll get to that here in just a minute. But there's going to be some major changes, because this was kind of supposed to be the year, and it was looking like early in the year like it was going to be the year where, Matt Rule, they're going to get things going, certainly in the right direction. They got to find a way to get that 6th win, because I'm just going to throw this out there. Don't have any information. I'm just basing things off of history. Dylan Raiola played for a handful of high schools. What was it? 3 high schools, I think, when he was there. He committed to not 1, not 2, but 3 colleges. If he knows his talent and he's a confident guy and he's looking at this and saying, I'm not getting developed here. Look, I'm just saying he's shown the ability to move around and change his mind. Okay? So it could be portal time if things really go south the rest of the way. For Nebraska, because like I said, he seems to not really be progressing towards the back half of this year. So, Matt Rule's seat will be hot, but I don't think it's certainly going to be a fireable offense. Lincoln Riley, that buyout is crazy. It's 80 million, 70 million. Go look. I encourage folks to go look back. When Lincoln Riley was hired, they got him private jets. They got him 2 houses. They gave him everything that he wanted. They put the program into Lincoln Riley's hands, and now look where the program, he was a huge part of the vision and the design of the current football facility that is being built. That's going to be fantastic on that campus out in Los Angeles. He's got a lot of fingerprints across this program right now. Like, I think the seat is a little bit hotter right now for Lincoln Riley. Not saying he's going to get fired, because I just don't think USC can afford to do that financially, especially in where college athletics is right now, right, where we're on the cusp of paying players. I just don't think teams are willing to pay that Jimbo Fisher-sized buyout, certainly right now. But, because Lincoln Riley's a little bit further along in this thing right now. Here's what I think. I think the longer you stay with somebody like Lincoln, and the more that a guy up north in the Pacific Northwest, Dan Lanning, the more he has success, all right, the more the gap is going to continue to grow out there on the West Coast. So I probably lean towards Lincoln Riley. But boy, if those Nebraska fans, if they end up finishing 5-7, they are going to they're going to have some pitchforks in Lincoln. I'll say that.
Fair enough. Let's talk about Dan Lanning in Oregon.
Yeah. Oh boy. So Oregon is just an absolute machine. They are rolling right now. Certainly didn't play their best game of the year against Maryland last week, but you face a Wisconsin team right now that has lost the last two. The last time we saw Wisconsin, they were just getting utterly steamrolled by the Iowa Hawkeyes right now. Like, when I look at the Ducks, one part that's great about their team is their secondary. They have a lockdown secondary right now, and what is Braden Locke known for? Turning the ball over, right? I have a hard time thinking that Wisconsin's going to be able to throw the ball in this game. Okay, so we got to get to the run game. We got to get to Tawi Walker. This is an Oregon front with Harmon, with Caldwell, and Jordan Birch is now back, and Mateo Uiagalelei has been great. But I think the thing that's really stood out to me on defense about the Oregon Ducks is the depth at linebacker. Bryce Betcher, right? He's going to be an Oregon legend, born and raised in this state. He's really stepped up. And when you saw the absence of guys like Jeffrey Bassa early on, Devin Jackson has stepped up and played a lot better. That's, I think, the thing. That defense has really grown in the middle. We were looking at Justin Jacobs in the preseason coming off of an injury. That's kind of been a little bit lingering. We were looking at Bassa, but now that room is a lot deeper. So when you look at the run game, I think it's going to be tough, certainly for the Badgers. Going on the road to Madison at night, I think Oregon is going to look to quiet this crowd early. I think that they have a tremendous advantage, not only against Wisconsin, but against a lot of teams that they play. I think the gap is continuing to grow right now between the Ducks and maybe some of the other teams from the other conferences. We saw Georgia lose. We'll see what happens with Texas the rest of the way, but that they are establishing themselves. Look at them in Ohio State, right? It's just the Big Ten is looking right for possibly another national championship this year, and it could end up being the first one, certainly for the Oregon Ducks.
And your Badgers, 1 week they look like they're right back to what they used to be back in the day, and then the very next week, all of a sudden, those Luke Fickell rumors start popping.
Yeah, so this is an interesting spot for the Badgers right now because it's a carbon copy of last year. Started 5-2. You played a significant team. Last year was Ohio State. This year was Penn State. You ended up losing at home on Big Ten Saturday night, and then, assuming they don't beat Oregon, they'd be sitting right there at 5-5 with Nebraska and Minnesota on the schedule. Just like last year, they needed to win one of those games against the Huskers and the Gophers. Now, they ended up winning both of those games last year. They finished 7-5, lost to LSU in the bowl game. Now, this year's, I think, a little bit of a different story, right? Because now you have Braden Locke the whole way. Tanner Mordecai came back later in the back half of last season. None of these games are gimmies. I know Minnesota had that flub last week against Rutgers, certainly. But I think still that could be PJ's seems like he's due for one every year, right? Either we've seen Bowling Green on the schedule. We've seen some of these other games where they just don't come out on fire, and when things are going well, it goes the other way for Minnesota. But I still think Minnesota is a solid football team. Roster versus roster, 85 versus 85. I might favor the Golden Gophers certainly right now, but that game is in Madison on Black Friday afternoon. So Wisconsin, look. They got to try to take shortcuts certainly against Oregon to try to stay in this game as long as they can. But when you look at them sitting there at 5-5 this year, I think it's different to how this thing was last year. Like I said, go on the road to Nebraska. You got Minnesota at home. If this is a team that ends up going 5-7, I think there's going to be some major changes. I think you're looking at 2 new coordinators. Wisconsin fans, they got a little bit of hope with that 3-game win streak in the middle of the season. But if they finish this thing off losing 5 consecutive games, I think there's going to be major challenges or major changes and challenges, of course. But Luke Fickell next year is going to be a big year for him, because if they don't once again turn this thing around into a 7 or an 8 win team, it's kind of plateauing, right? It's not really growing, and the recruiting is doing well, but we need to see the results certainly on the football field, and that could be a challenge for Wisconsin.
Ted, can you believe there's only 3 games left in the regular season?
What happened? Where'd the time go?
I feel like we were just doing off-season episodes a month and a half ago.
But here we are. Yeah, it's gone so quick. It always goes so quick. But we're saying that. But this year, man, it's a little bit different, because now when the regular season ends, we still got, when you look at things from a macro Big Ten level, assuming Oregon and Ohio State or maybe Penn State, maybe even your favorite Indiana Hoosiers, right, make a little bit of a run. Certainly I
waved the white flag on that one, by the way.
Yeah, well, we all got to take one every now and then. But
yeah.
But if some of these Big Ten teams make a run, we're talking about the national championship on January 20th. We got a long way to go, right? This is 16 games. This is a possibility of 17 games this season. So in previous years, now you're looking at just a couple of games left. No, you got 4 games left. You could have a month's worth of games certainly to go. So this is the time where you got to get fresh. This is the time where you got to start playing your best. Like if you're the Oregon Ducks, kick this thing into gear. I know Wisconsin and Washington aren't the biggest and baddest opponents on your schedule. I will say this though. That team. This is a team in Oregon that has been great in the first half, and they've kind of coasted in the second half. I don't know if they're going to coast against Washington. This is a motivated football team. Dan Lanning has yet to beat the Huskies. I think they're and that's at Autzen Stadium in Eugene. They're going to look to do some things. But this is the time where you got to start playing your best football. I talked about that when Penn State lost to Ohio State. All right, it happened. Let's fix what we need to fix. Let's rattle off some wins. Let's be that hot 11-1 team that nobody wants to play.
Ted, let the folks know what's going on your channel.
Yeah, got a couple of game previews here coming up this week. I'll kind of be out of town this weekend, but I will be back with a big recap of the week. And then, man, I am dialed in here for these last 2 weeks of the regular season. We got the Big Ten Championship in Indianapolis, which, doesn't matter what happens with Ohio State and Indiana. I think this is probably going to be the biggest Big Ten championship game of all time, with all due respect to 2015 Iowa and Michigan State, which had a spot to the 14th college football playoff on the line. That's going to be certainly a huge setting in Indianapolis, and we are dialed into playoff time certainly here coming up as well. So there's a lot of fun, interesting stuff here coming up. So I'm very excited to share it.
Best in the world, Ted. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. That's right. We have football, we have basketball, we have all kinds of Illini content here on Locked On Illini. So once again, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It doesn't cost you guys anything, but it certainly does help this channel grow and go into the algorithms of other college basketball, college football, and more importantly, Illini fans. Simple reminder, Wednesday, right after the game, we're going to be going live right here on this channel. So make sure you hit that notification bell. You'll know exactly when I come on. I may or may not have a guest with me. We'll see. I've reached out to a couple of people. If you're interested, let me know in the Discord. I'll bring you on. just like I'll be going on immediately after the game on Saturday as well, after the football game. That's exactly what we're going to do here. I may even try to go live immediately after the women's basketball game on Thursday, though. I don't know if I can pull that off with the 2 kids that I have. We'll see. But regardless, I appreciate all of you guys' support, and I will see you Wednesday immediately after the game. ILL. Love you guys.